This is where the cool podcast intro is supposed to go, but I forgot to finish it. Anyway, here's Scuffed as Fuck. Welcome to the Scuffed as Fuck podcast, the only place where ammo is limited, jump scares lurk around every corner, and the only remaining ink ribbon is somewhere on the other side of the map. I'm your host who refuses to leave the safety of the save room where nothing can hurt me, aka Koda, and today I'm joined by our co-host Cubic and a longtime friend of mine, a man whose name is synonymous with the survival horror genre itself to me. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Larcher.
Oh my god, thank you. Thank you. You're gonna make me blush here. Like, you might not see it right now, but for audio listeners, I am all red in the face right now. I'm getting the vapors after that. Thank you so much.
So, Larcher, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. That's the one thing I love doing the most is talk about myself. My name on the internet is Larcher, SSN Larcher. I am a fledgling streamer slash former podcaster through what's called the Select Start Network, hence the SSN Larcher part. I am an old man that has been playing video games longer than I believe my co-hosts have been alive.
You're not that old.
I know. But I've been playing video games for a long time, and it became much like Koda, and I'm sure like Cubic, a passion of mine to start streaming it, which you would see me on Twitch if you're a nice person like Koda, excuse me, Koda. That is still a very weird thing for me to do because I've always called you by your name.
Oh, I know. I mean, technically, my name is Dakota, but I've always got it. I know, shocker.
Oh my gosh.
But
I'm
I
learning so
went by
much.
Cody for years and years,
Uh,
but I've started going by my actual name recently, or at least
well,
close to it.
well, guess what's gonna start now, man? Every time I see you online,
Huh?
it's gonna
Dakota.
I mean, look, I will go by what you prefer. If you want Dakota, it'll be Dakota. If you want Koda, it's gonna be Koda.
No, it's totally fine. It's all right. As long as you don't call me late for dinner, I don't care what the fuck you call me.
Oh, I will make sure you're on time, my friend. I will make sure you are there to feast upon the deliciousness of rotting flesh that's within this franchise.
Oh, fantastic. Actually, that's a perfect segue. So, as you guys could probably assume based on the intro that I said, as well as that little statement there, we're going to be talking about Resident Evil, and not only Resident Evil, but survival horror, the genre itself, and how it's kind of changed over the years and what it means nowadays. But first, I actually want to ask both of you guys a question. What would you say are some of the key staples of survival horror as a genre?
That's
Ooh.
a So if we would be talking about, we'll say, the traditional, what I would consider Japanese sense of survival horror,
Sure.
I always go by the classic marks of you need quiet ambiance at times, eerie
Mhm.
music playing in the background, the scarcity of supplies like Japanese developers know no bounds of, punishing you in the slightest and most ridiculous of ways, and that constant tension of like what is around the
Correct. I
Yeah.
agree with a lot of those.
Yeah, that's really good. I would agree with a lot of those points. I think mainly the limited resource aspect of it, the fact that you are super vulnerable in a very oppressive setting. I think that really plays into the atmosphere of you going through these different settings. And I also think too, like if there's like a quick decision making aspect of it, I think that helps with adding to the tension. Um, Maybe some isolation aspects, I don't know. There's a lot of, there's a couple of different games that come to mind. Silent Hill is one of them. Um,
Oh,
but yeah,
absolutely.
I think all of those combined kind of make for a great survival horror setting.
Well, you guys actually just named off almost, if not all, of the key aspects that were part of the original games that inspired it. Because the actual term of survival horror, I don't know if you guys know, didn't really come around until Resident Evil 1 showed up in 1996. Before that, there were games that released in the late 80s and early 90s that actually had some of these key elements to the survival horror genre as we know today, but they were not considered that because it didn't really exist. So you have games like Sweet Home, which is a game that I learned while I was doing some research earlier. It was an RPG game that was released exclusively in Japan in 1989 for the Famicom, and it followed these five filmmakers that were searching a mansion for precious paintings while fighting off a whole bunch of different supernatural enemies. And
Ooh.
right? And although the combat style was akin to your standard RPG, similar to like Final Fantasy, it did feature a lot of the key aspects of what the genre has become known for, such as quick time events, inventory management, puzzle solving, scattered notes that helped expand the story, having to backtrack when you found different pieces, etc., etc. It's actually it's really cool to look at this game and see how far it's come. Let me see if I can find the picture that I was looking at earlier of the case itself.
So
Have
while
either of you guys heard of this?
funny enough, there is a book that I've been reading recently that a friend of mine got me for my birthday called Itchy Tasty, and it is the unofficial, we'll say, biography, the historia of the Resident Evil franchise. And it talks about, and I will not be able to pronounce the names, and I'm very sorry. So I will not be saying them. I will not be butchering their beautiful names with my Canadian accent. What it was is like you had mentioned, Sweet Home, which is a Japanese video game, which was actually based off of a Japanese horror movie, was one of the first
Mhm.
few ones in Japan that featured a lot of the things that I'm sure we will be talking about today. And it inspired, because if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was either it inspired one of the developers to create Resident Evil, or he might have actually worked, because it's a Capcom. It's a Capcom. It's a
A
Capcom.
Capcom.
Yeah, apparently I went Minnesota there for a second. It is
Yeah.
it is a Capcom licensed game, and one of the developers from Sweet Home ends up by going over, taking the ideas that they had that they kind of liked and wanted to evolve on it, because the idea of Sweet Home itself, again, it has these like Castlevania-esque, like Metroidvania-esque ideas, grabbing something, coming
Mhm.
back, trying to solve this, like, rinse, wash, repeat kind of thing. And then, but the developer, one of the developers, like, I need more. Like, very limited by the hardware of the Nintendo or the Famicom in Japan, and
Oh yeah.
only when the PlayStation came out did his, like, pretty much his vision came to life. It was like, I can take what I learned from Sweet Home and bring it into this 3D space. And I would
Mhm.
highly recommend for anyone outside of even just wanting to experience what we would argue could probably be the very first horror survival game, uh, watch the movie. It is crazy in the best way.
It's something.
Yeah, it
I
really is.
watched bits and pieces of it.
But, what I will also say, for us in North America, the closest thing we would have had to something like this would either have been if you were to look at, like, Ghosts and Goblins,
Mhm.
or even the original Friday the 13th horror game that was on the Nintendo, right? Where you're a camp counselor going around
Oh
trying to
my
grab
god.
the counselor kids, picking up little bits of resources here and there. And then sometimes randomly, if you were quote unquote lucky enough, you would find Jason in one of the cabins, and you have to try to fight him off. And by fight him off, I mean you were throwing stuff at him to hopefully disable him, so you can just run out and try to circle back and hope that he's not in that room anymore. That was the closest thing that we
Yeah.
had, I would say, to what Japan was experiencing with Sweet Home.
Friday the 13th is a wild game. Let me put that out there.
Yeah,
I love that game.
the original one. Oh yeah.
It is wild. Actually, somebody recreated it recently. We're going into a tangent, but someone recreated this recently in the Doom engine. So it's
Oh.
basically the same exact game, but you're playing it in the old like 1990 whatever
Mhm.
Doom style. And it's It's actually really crazy to see how well it works for that kind of game. I'll have to see if I can find it somewhere, and I'll send it to you at some point.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Um, Another game that heavily inspired uh, the series was Alone in the Dark, the original 1992 MS-DOS game. It was a 3D game with 2D background. It featured a fixed camera system, multiple different enemies, some that you had to defeat by solving puzzles, some that you had to defeat outright by fighting them, and then as well as enemies that needed to be avoided completely rather than fought head on, a la the Nemesis from the Resident Evil games, and then as well as just that very deeply unsettling atmosphere. Now, nowadays, it wouldn't I don't know if it'd necessarily be considered as scary because, I mean, I'm looking at some of the pictures of the original 1992 game, and the only thing terrifying are the polygons. However, like, however, they did recently remake it back in 2024, and it is considered by far one of the most influential horror games, by multiple people, um, due to its atmosphere, the soundtrack, as well as the inventions with technology that they had to do with how limited it was. And some of those inspirations did actually get pulled into Resident Evil, the series. Um,
Look at those
like
eyeballs.
I know,
Oh
look
my
at how
gosh.
beady his eyes are.
I mean, look, I'd be peeking out too if I was in a room of horrors, a house of horrors. All right.
That's
See,
fair.
this was peak gaming era for you though. You had to have been what, probably a teenager at the
Oh,
time?
hey. Whoo, hold on. I was born in 1988. I was still but a wee little child at that time. All
Okay.
right.
So you're
Um,
not. I'm
but
just
no,
giving you shit.
yeah, no, of course, of
Uh,
course. If I'm gonna call myself old, I'm expecting a little bit of a pushback here from these wonderful hosts.
You cut out
Uh,
there.
oh, sorry. I tend to move a lot when I talk, so my apologies. I'm just saying,
It's
if I'm gonna
okay.
call myself old, I'm gonna be ready for these wonderful hosts to be like, oh, we're gonna give a couple of ribs here and there. But I will say, my experience early on, like my very first horror game, it wouldn't have been around that time because unfortunately, Resident Evil slash Capcom kind of became entrenched with Sony Entertainment. And not to say that they were exclusive, but for the first little bit, Resident Evil was exclusively on the PlayStation. And it wasn't until Resident Evil 2 that it was released also. I don't know if it was at the same time as its Sony counterpart, but it had come out on the Nintendo 64. And that was my very first taste. My little sousson, little nibble on Resident Evil was RE2 on the Nintendo 64.
I actually didn't know that it ever released on the Nintendo 64.
As far as I know, up until the release of Resident Evil 4, which came out again as like a time exclusive on the Nintendo GameCube,
Mhm.
that was the only Resident Evil game that, at least from my knowledge, that was on the Nintendo console was RE2, and then years later RE4.
Wild to me.
mm.
Right? Because it's interesting.
Um,
It's interesting. Sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off there.
no,
It's
you're
because
good.
Uh, Capcom used to have such a, I mean, albeit it was like the only game in town, pun intended, was Nintendo. And it was
Yeah.
only until Sony decided to be like, well, our add-on to the is it the Super Nintendo, or no, it might have been its add-on. Yeah, it might have been the Super Nintendo was an add-on, which would have been a disc. And then
Mhm.
Nintendo's like, we're not interested in that, which they're like, okay, well, we as Sony are a $1 million company. We'll just build our own system then. And then lured in companies like Capcom, other Japanese developers or, industry folk in the region and convinced them to start making games for themselves, which, as we could see, is kind of the rest is history as we are now outside of alt canon, main canon storylines, we're up to number 9 right now.
it is crazy how far it's gone.
Mhm.
Actually want to ask, what is your first so you said your first experience with Resident Evil was Resident Evil 2?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
What was that like growing up? Tell me about
So,
it a little bit.
of course, I would love to. So I am at my local game store or video store. Back then, for younger listeners, we rented games. Like that was a normal
The
thing that
old
would happen.
days.
The good old days, right? Where you'd spend $3 or $5 and you had the game for 3 days, and you'd better play as much as you can within those 3 days, or you will suffer late fees. The thing that scared
Mhm.
my parents. But we rented it, and I remember the clerk gave us the heads up, like, look, this is a scary game. I don't know if your kids should be playing this. And our parents were like, they watch wrestling, they've seen horror movies, like it's. I will tell you right now, even though RE2 was more considered of an action survival horror, there was nothing more frightening than turning the corner and then a cinematic kicks in and fixed angles, by the way. Well, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I'm sure we will talk about it. But that
Mhm.
turning the corner as Leon Kennedy, and then you just see your very first liquor. That brain muscle mass creature with its like elongated tongue, the slobber as it's like hovering over a corpse because I believe it just ripped off a police officer's head, and you're just sitting there like, what do I do? I have a handgun. What do I do?
What
And
do I
being the
do?
like, I got two choices at that point. I could start blasting and hope for the best, or I just turn around and I run away. Being the brazen child that I was, I tried to shoot it once, not understanding that there was mechanics behind liquor, which is like if you were to be quiet, it won't chase you. No, bang, 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 bang. It just immediately came up and decapitated me.
Oh,
Hmm.
lovely.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting because the narrative that you are brought up to as a kid playing video games is that you see an enemy, oh, you must have to take it out. You know what I mean? I feel like
Right.
that's been something that has been beat into our heads ever since we started playing video games.
right. And then
100%.
a game also that doesn't show you your own health unless you go to the main menu screen, like your equip screen. The only tellings of damage is how your character poses, right?
Mm, yep.
One of the biggest issues from Resident Evil 1 and then going into 2 was in 1, you couldn't really tell. There was no signs of damage that were taking place on Chris or Jill. It would just you would get hit, and usually by the third one, depending on what kind of creature was attacking you, that was it. You're dead. Like you just drop. In 2,
Yep.
they decided to add that idea of like, okay, well now Leon or Claire's gonna start holding their side, and then they're gonna slump down even more. And then like they slow down while they're walking, which I will tell you right now, when you start Resident Evil 2 and you go through the whole cutscene, you get out of it, everything's on fire, a tanker just exploded. Leon or Claire, and you're literally surrounded by zombies with testing you right away with the idea of limited inventory. You have maybe at best 12 shots in your gun, and you're like, there's 6 zombies. Do you is one shot gonna be enough? Probably not. You better start running because if you don't, you start getting crowded, and immediately after one hit, you'll see your character just take that hit, blood spurting everywhere, and then they start limping. It's like, oh no, this is real. Like I need to run away as they just
This is
swarm you.
bad.
Yeah, that classic the classic style of zombie too, which was like they're just lumbering towards you. Not even standing
It
there
was
menacingly. They're turtling towards you menacingly. There's so many of them.
it was at this moment he knew he fucked up.
That's exactly right.
Oh, man. Well, what about you, Cubic? You said you before we started this that you don't really have a whole lot of experience in this genre. Have you played games in the survival horror genre at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have a friend that loves the Resident Evil series, and she talks about it all the time. She's already platinumed Requiem, which just came out not too long ago.
God damn.
Um, but yeah, survival horror. I'm trying to think of what games I've played. Outlast, does that count?
Oh, absolutely. Outlast
Yeah.
is part of the survival horror genre.
And that game scared the shit out of me, so I can't imagine continuing to play games like that.
Oh,
Because 'Cause I'm a very, like, I love my platformers, I love my Souls-likes. I don't
Right,
know I don't know. Not that it doesn't appeal to me, I never really got into the series.
for sure.
it's funny that you bring up Outlast because that to me is that North American style of survival horror. And
Mhm,
what
Mhm.
because I kind of brought it up earlier, it's this idea with North American versus the Japanese style. Japanese style horror is once like you have one area where you will be safe. And
mhm,
this is again speaking specifically with Resident Evil, but even Silent Hill had that. If you're here, you're safe. In North American survival horror, Alien Isolation, Outlast is an excellent example of that. It's you can be safe as long as you hide and
yep,
don't make a sound. And then you can have a moment where you can reset yourself versus these Japanese style or Dino Crisis as well, which is basically an RE clone. But it was a style like, oh, my only moment of rest is two choices: blast everything to all hell in the room that I'm in and hope that I have enough ammunition for it, or I have to run all the way back to that safe room, right? Which the safe room, Koda, you've seen me talk about it
mhm,
already. Resident Evil
mhm,
has some of the best safe room music where like it'll literally puts you at ease. And then you're like, oh, I
it
feel
is,
good. Like I could chill here for a long time. But then you step back on, it's like, oh no, there's a hunter.
right?
Oh no, there's the giant baby lady that bites your head off in one hit. Like, why don't I just stay in here?
Right, exactly. Like that is me. I am an absolute baby when it comes to horror games. I love the Resident Evil games because it at least gives me a spot where I feel safe and I'm like, okay, this is good. This is fine. I can deal with this. There's some chill music. North American ones such as Alien Isolation, as you said, Alone in the Dark, or not Alone in the Dark. It starts
Outlast?
Outlast?
with an A.
No,
No, Outlast is
Oh.
Outlast, you guys said, but the it starts with an A. There's a Machine for Pigs, and a couple of other
Amnesia.
ones.
Amnesia.
Thank you.
Not a
Mm.
problem.
Um, Amnesia is the other one where it doesn't matter. You have to hide. You take 2 steps outside, you immediately have to hide. There's nowhere safe. I tried at one point to play Amnesia on, I tried to stream it one time, and I got into the game, I got through the first intro bit, and then I get to the part where you get to see the monster first time, and I immediately went into a room, went into a little storage closet, closed the doors in front of me, crouched, and then I went, "Alright, that's it for this episode," and we ended the stream. I didn't play it ever again. Um, the Resident Evil and their save music is very good, very nice, and very good at keeping me uh, um, um, but, that was a tangent. I lost my thought process.
My
We
apologies.
said save No, we said save music, and then my brain went, "I like being safe." Um, uh So I guess let's talk about since we've already kind of dived into some of the intro or the first couple games of Resident Evil. Let's talk about when it started to kind of shift a little bit and go into one of the games that I know I've 100%ed before, Resident Evil 4. Now, this one is this one honestly is my favorite solely because it's the only one I was able to complete because it was kind of that step away from the horror genre. They ended up bringing a little bit more action aspects to it. They replaced the fixed camera angles with the over the shoulder kind of aspects. But it still had that tension of you had to stop and shoot at things in order to, you know, keep it with that whole anxious inducing feel of the Resident Evil games. But what are your thoughts on it, Larcher? How do you feel about that first step away from the horror genre?
Yeah, I'm about to blow your mind a little bit here, and it's gonna be kind of a little history. So, funny enough, the first attempt of kind of separating itself from the pure survival horror aspect of Resident Evil actually happened in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis.
Really?
One of the younger developers that was working on RE2 got tapped to do a sequel because during that time they wanted to have the idea of RE4 existed and they wanted to work on it,
Mhm.
but there was limitations at the time and they had to learn how to use the system because they were transitioning from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2. And they just did not know at the time if they had enough experience with the new hardware capabilities and how to actually create games on the PlayStation 2. So they went over to this younger gentleman and they're like, look, we're going to give you about a year to develop a new Resident Evil game. It's going to be a spin-off and you don't have to worry about it. Like, you just make it, be creative if you want. And it started getting the name of like, I think it was at the time it didn't have a number attached to it, and that's a big deal, especially for a Resident Evil franchise. And even
Mhm.
even a lot of the Japanese games in general, it's like when you put a number attached to a game, we'll say Silent Hill 1, 2, 3, 4, Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and all the other ones. The moment you step away from the number system, so like Code Veronica or Code Veronica X, it is no
Mhm.
longer considered a main canon entry in the series. It's not considered a spinoff. So it may not
Right.
actually count as lore within the franchise. It was an attempt to do something different within the world of Resident Evil. Like Resident Evil Outbreak, Resident Evil Reverse, I think it was called, or Revenge or something like that. It was all these ideas where it's like, it's in the world of Resident Evil, but it doesn't count as a story. Revelations 1 and 2 is another good
Yep.
example of that. And this young man's like, okay, well, if I'm going to be more of an action type game. So they took the idea of Mr. X, this giant overbearing character that only you get a chance to play against in the original Resident Evil 2 if you completed story A of either Leon or Claire, starting we'll say story B with either one of those characters. They add in the Mr. X character as a thing to add pressure and fear of like, this thing's always going to pursue you no matter what, unless you're in a safe room.
Mhm.
And when they started developing it, it's like, all right, well, we can't just use Mr. X again. We have to do something else. So the Nemesis creature gets created off a variant off the T virus and all that fun jazz, or the G virus. I can't remember which one it is. And it becomes this giant figure that's just chasing you the whole time. And then as the game progresses, which was a very shorter game, this thing just becomes faster and more violent, and it's becoming more of like you're running away from your Indiana Jones running away from the giant rock rolling down in the temple, right? That's what the
Right.
game became. But then after they realized, oh wow, 4 is going to take too long to develop. This Nemesis now, well, we're going to call it Resident Evil 3. So you have to make this a main canon story. So you have to use a character that everyone recognizes and hurry up because we don't have a lot of time. And that's when Jill got inputted because originally it was going to be just Carlos and some other Umbrella core employee just trying to make it out of the city. They're like, okay, well, no, now we're going to do this. But if we're going to put Jill in here, it has to make sense. Well, we're going to do it so that it's kind of like they started calling it Resident Evil 1.5 or 1.9 because it would take place at the right at the beginning of Resident Evil. We'll say like Jill makes it to the city to investigate the
Yeah.
corruption of Umbrella. But then as the game progresses, well, that's when Resident Evil 2 comes into play. So now the outbreak's here. And now it went from like a peaceful kind of a scenario with the Nemesis creature chasing you to now like, oh, you're in the middle of an apocalypse now. So you have the zombies plus Nemesis chasing you. So the game actually progresses between the story of 1 to 2, and then at the very end of 3 is when everything blows up, which is the end of 2. So when that
It is.
happened, yeah, it's this crazy idea of like, and the game sold almost as well as 2. It became a big hit. So it was like, yeah, like we're gonna, of course, this is now a main canon game, which led to the 4. The 4, they're like, okay, the action part worked. What can we do differently? Let's just take the action aspect into this grandiose adventure now, right? In this, non-disclosure, some kind of uh, Spanish city, sort of, but we're not really going to call it that, right? Like, if you know some
Very
Spanish
vague.
101, yeah, if you know some Spanish 101, you might pick up on a couple of words here and there, like Las
Las
Plagas. I don't think that's
Plagas.
really a word. Yeah, see, and it's like,
Yeah,
okay,
no.
And then it became this beautiful mix of like mostly action now, with a couple of still some moments of when those dogs would jump out of the garden. You're like, oh, geez, God, what are
Mhm.
you doing here? That stuff was still there. And then the classic tales of Resident Evil, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, but like there's certain tropes that always have to happen in a Resident Evil game. But 4 being that over the shoulder, bang, 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 more resource, but now there's more swarms of zombies or the infected of the Las Plagas, and then seeing the evolution of that, yeah, that was. And then seeing Leon S. Kennedy in that leather jacket, a little puffer stuff on the top. Mwah, my God. If ever I dreamed of a perfect man, I found him.
Listen, have you ever seen this before, Cubic? Resident Evil 4 at all in its entirety?
Not really.
So, Resident Evil 4 was actually one of the first games that I got to play. I picked it up at a garage sale when I was just a wee child. And this was back when my parents were kind of like letting me do my own thing, but not really letting me do my own thing. They were kind of like, "Oh, you can watch this, you could do this, but like you can't watch this stuff because it's too graphic." And I found Resident Evil 4 in a box at uh, a garage sale, and the cover of it looked cool as all hell, and my parents were just like, "Okay, yeah, sure," not really actually looking to see what this game was about, and, like, look at this cover. Imma post a picture of it for you real quick. Tell me that doesn't look sick.
Yeah, I feel like you got that strong male protagonist on the front, and you're like, yeah, I wanna be that guy that
Mhm.
draws you in.
Oh, man, and, this is actually let me see if I can find this. This is, the actual cover art I think I had for no, I'm not seeing it because that's the premium edition one. But uh, it was a sick game getting to play as
Ooh,
Leon Kennedy, and
okay.
yeah, there's a good one. There, getting to play as Leon Kennedy, this dude who just gives out a whole bunch of different quips. He doesn't seem to want to take anyone's bullshit. He's very um, he's very stereotypical action man. I feel like that's appropriate to say. Would you say, Larcher?
Yeah, 100%. It was what the Japanese developers thought of an American action star because, again, with Resident Evil, all this takes place in the States, right? From the very beginning. So, like, they tried to make a game that they felt would attract the North American audience or the American audience in, which was, all right, well, what do people like? Well, they like Bruce Willis. Like, they love Yippee-ki-yay. They love the John McClane, like the one-liners and all these things. So, like, the Arnold Schwarzeneggers, so, like, alright, well, couldn't do it in
Yeah.
2, we didn't have that kind of time. 4,
Think
like, we've had like, the world is our oyster, so let's just make him the most smarmy, jaded prick that people are going to
mhm.
love at all the time, and they're right, like, the moment when he meets Salazar, it's like, "Oh, welcome, my brothers and sisters," and he's like, "I'm not your bro," kind of attitude.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Think think like if Johnny Cage from the Mortal Kombat series was in a horror game,
Yeah.
Okay.
and that's him. Here's the picture of him in his sick leather coat.
Oh, please, come on, deliver. Oh, that is so beautiful.
I
And that's
always
the
Uh-huh.
remake.
That's
I
the
always
remake.
I always tease my friend because I always say that Leon has Chester McBadbat bangs from Fairly Odd Parents.
He does.
Well, I mean, look,
He
this
does.
game also like, I know that Leon a little bit in 2 had this, but, like, this is also, like, prime time, My Chemical Romance, and Simple Plan, and all, like, these
Oh,
emo
yeah.
haircut styles. So, it was fitting for Leon to do it.
Very
It was
fitting.
like he made, like, a young protagonist male that people would automatically be drawn to. Come on, look at that. Master.
Like, here's another good one of him. This one I think is from the original, actually.
Yep, that it
Yeah.
is.
Like, look at how McBadass he looks here. Just fatty McBadass. He looks like every every alt girl's like dream guy
Yep.
of like the emo hair, like super like buff, like I'm here to protect you. I
I care, but I can't really show you that I care. But
can't
trust me,
really
I care.
show it. 100%. But it's honestly one of my favorite games solely because it kind of drops a little bit of that horror aspect. As much as I do love the horror genre itself, it was one of those games that I was able to actually play for extended periods of time and not wet the bed, um, as a child. And, so the story itself did have some terrifying aspects to it, such as the Las Plagas disease, having were they called the Diamond Heads in that one? They weren't Crimson Heads because that was from 2,
Well,
but they were basically oh, go ahead.
sorry. So the Crimson Heads actually showed up in RE1 when they remastered it in like 2017, I think it
That's what it
was.
was.
Yeah, and they added that character. But you know, you're right. The Diamond Heads, like with the giant whip blade thing that comes out, and oh man,
Mhm.
like such a pain to kill.
Basically the Las Plagas disease was similar but different to the T virus of the original games to kinda get into the nitty-gritty of it. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you will. But, so it was similar but different to it in the fact that it was an infected strain that was causing these people to turn into zombies and stuff. However, it didn't have the same aspects of the one that occurred in Raccoon City. And some of these enemies, when you would kill them, would basically it was a giant parasite living inside of them, and so their heads would explode. They'd have these giant tentacles pop out with razor blades attached to them, basically, and it was a terrifying enemy to try and go up against.
My
So
gosh.
you are very much like you're pretty much on the dot here. So the Las Plagas ended up, story wise, revealing that it was kind of one of the core ingredients that Umbrella used to create the viruses. This parasitic entity that they had found again in this like no name region in Europe was dug up,
Mm,
fossilized. They found a way to like reverse engineer it, and some of it actually was still alive, even though it was encapsulated for undiscriminate amount of time. And that's what made the connection between the zombies that we'd see in 1 and 2, and then what we experience here in 4. And the biggest difference was these are still living hosts up until their heads explode, right? These are still
right.
technically living people, but there's like a hive mentality that
Yeah.
the cult leader Sadler will say had the queen or the king parasite that could send out what looked like to be like to the eye psychic waves of information to get everyone to come back. But if you want to get more scientific about it, it was probably more of like a pheromone thing, where releasing kind of a scent or a smell that would trigger these basically bug-like creatures to then be like, okay, now we defend, now we attack, now we resume, we become passive until needed to defend the colony, defend our queen,
Hmm.
Lord Sadler.
Here
Okay.
are pictures. This is from the remaster of what it looked like. Terrifying.
My
And
gosh.
then right? And then here's an actual in-action picture in game from the original PS2 version.
Oh my
So
gosh.
right, so this is the idea of so that's when they're in the night suits. The night suit ones were you had to shoot fast, and if you didn't have a flash grenade, yeah, because flash grenades in the game somehow something about the light of a flash grenade would do an insta kill. So you'd start
Didn't really
stocking up
make
on those.
sense when you think about it.
You know, I don't question a lot when it comes to Resident Evil. There's only a few things that I've ever said. Wait a
That's
minute.
one of them for me.
Uh,
Who
it,
are you?
thank you. It is this moment of like, I'm sure they needed to. The developers had some notes being like, look, these things are too tough, and we need a way to kind of maybe kill these things right away. Fine, a flash grenade, sure, why not? As long
Be
as
the
these
sound.
things, right? It could be the sounds, right? It could be a lot of things. They never really, to my knowledge, I don't think they ever really explained why. Extreme
Mhm.
photosynthesis was too much for these things. It could be that they were dormant creatures who lived in the shadows. This
It could be.
parasite. So then, the idea of light kind of ruins it, which, if that's true, coincides with what happens in certain creatures later down the road in the franchise, where light
Makes sense, yep.
kind of like really messes them up. But I remember stocking up on so many flash grenades once I accidentally made the discovery of A, these things one shot with the flash grenade, and B, if you shoot a flash grenade when there's like a gaggle, or no, it was a murder of crows, it would
Mhm.
insta kill all the crows. And then in the game, crows for some reason had money, ammo, sometimes some like extra things, that perks that you wouldn't even think about. So murk the
Well,
murk the crows.
when you think about it, crows are little shits, and they like to collect little things. They
True.
actually do this in real life. They will pick up anything that they find shiny, and they will collect it. They are little shits, and so it makes sense that they would actually collect things whenever you would kill a big old crowd of them.
Yeah. But nothing was more terrifying than taking down, because again, early on in RE4 in the game, you shoot a guy or a lady, they fall, they're dead, that's the end of it. Now, maybe about quarter in, almost halfway in the game, you kill this guy, like, cool, I'm gonna walk away, and you just start seeing them convulsing. You're like, what's going on? What's this? And then you hear like that ripping of flesh and bone, and then the diamond head comes out, and it's like, what is happening?
Right. The first time one of them exploded out of the head, I was like, I think I dropped my first F-bomb. I was a child. I was probably like, oh my god, had to have been probably maybe like 12 or 13, and I'm like, "Oh my fuck." And I was just like, uh, um, it is terrifying to see these things. It doesn't matter how old you are. Even for the graphics of the PlayStation 2, seeing that come out of that suit of armor is just nightmare fuel. Um, but that honestly is one of my favorite games from the series, and as the years went on, they kinda lost their way. Um,
Oh,
I say this with the most love in the world, but I wanna talk about one of the silliest things that ever occurred in the series, and that is Mr. Chris Redfield punching a fucking boulder to escape a volcano.
have you
Can
seen or heard about this, Cubic? Have you seen the meme about it?
No, that's just really funny.
can we just can you explain to us, story-wise, why this is so relevant? Like,
Yeah,
why does Mr. Badass have to be so angry that he decides punching a fucking boulder is the right way to go instead of, I don't know, climbing over it, moving it, doing something else? And why the fuck are they in a volcano? What is happening here?
Alright, so Resident Evil 5 took the ideas of 4 of, like, this action, grandiose adventure, then looked at it, it's like, "What if we just get rid of all the scares, guys, and we
Oh,
just make an action game?" And they're like, "Okay, well, Leon doesn't really fit that role, but he kinda does, but he kinda doesn't." It's like, "Okay, well, how about we get a returning character? How about we get Chris?" And not just Chris from the first one, Chris who's been pumping and getting those gains, but also using that needle. Like, this man is
This
superhuman
man's on
strong.
Rogaine.
Yeah, yeah, you're looking at, like, Homelander. This is pre-Homelander, right? This is Soulja Boy, pretty much,
Yeah,
from the boys. Like, it is
from the boys.
an insane version of Chris, like, super jacked, and the reason why he's in this kind of a mood, pretty much, is, they're investigating, I don't know if it's the BSAA at the time or a version of it. They're investigating, this strange outbreak, which at the time they don't know anything about. You, as the player, kind of connect the dots really quickly. It's like, oh, it's the Las Plagas, but in an African town now, right?
okay.
Uh, Chris is partnered up with someone, which is the second time this has ever happened in the series, where you would have an ally that would either walk with you or you could control, in the name of Sheva.
Mhm.
And the way that it would work in that scenario is you would find your way throughout the town, figure, oh, this is the Las Plagas. We kind of have an idea what this is. You find out that Wesker, the villain from the very first Resident Evil, who everyone within the main canon presumed was dead, turns out no, he's very much so alive. And not only is he alive, but he's mutated. He injected himself with a variant of the virus in the first game, which then gave him these superhuman abilities. Like, quick speed teleportation. Again, the Soldier Boy kind of strength, but not to the levels of pushing a boulder, apparently. And you then later find out as well that, well, the heroine in 1 gets somehow, we'll say, mind controlled or brainwashed to becoming a villain in this game. So Chris goes out on this huge spree of like, we're going to save Jill. We have to figure out what's going on, and we're going to end Wesker. Wesker ends up by mutating into this giant creature and is attacking Sheva. And then the only way that somehow Chris could save Sheva from this moment is like there's a giant, perfectly spherical boulder in his way. And he's like, I just can't control myself. I gotta punch it. And yeah, like you have this little moment of like a button mash event. And then eventually, instead of just shoving it a bunch of times, he basically just winds up his fist and just freaking just spirit punches it to the point where it goes rolling down. Saves Sheva, and then they have the classic moment of, well, what do we do with the big bad? Here's an idea. Let's blow him up with a rocket, which is a staple within the RE franchise. It's almost every villain ends with literally a bang.
Interesting.
It really is the case.
Yeah,
Okay.
it took them 5 entries in the main canon's entry to finally kill arguably the biggest of big bads at the time, outside of the corporate, espionage and all this like shadow work stuff happening in the background. The main villain of the franchise, Wesker, finally makes his triumphant return to either get blown up by a rocket, which also is him like stuck in a giant volcano pit as it's like the volcano is erupting.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huge action piece.
Do you follow so far? Do you have any questions, Cubic? Because it's only going to get weirder for this next one.
No, I knew this was a weird franchise. I did know. So one thing that my friend shared with me is, I just find this like, a very funny fact. In Japan, it's called Biohazard.
That's correct.
I guess the 7th game in the series is Resident Evil Biohazard. And
So it's Biohazard.
no. In Japan, it's Biohazard Resident Evil.
Yeah. 7 had this very interesting point where they're trying to be like, you know what? Well, we'll get to it to explain it.
Yeah.
I have to try to remove the blockage I have in my mind to talk about.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is what I wanted to. I was like, do you have any questions before we move on to the even weirder one? Let's talk about where everything went downhill. I personally, for me.
Okay, hold on. You say downhill. We can cuss a little on this show, correct?
Of course.
Everything went tits up. Okay, it was
tits up. Everything went tits up. That's not a fucking curse word. You want to hear a curse word? This game is an absolute piece of shit. I don't care. I know that there are people that love it. Those people are wrong, and I'm saying that because who is the main character of 6? What happened that decided that? So Resident Evil 6 is basically a culmination of 4 and 5, I would say, in a sense, where they decided to throw almost nearly all of the horror out, besides a few elements, and they give you the option of playing through multiple different characters' stories. You have a couple of missions where you play as Leon Kennedy through a campaign. You also have a couple of missions where you play as Chris Redfield through the campaign, as well as a couple of others. And it's just, who is the main character? What the fuck is happening in this story? Larcher, please go ahead and talk for me because I can't.
Okay, I'm gonna do my best here. So basically, what it felt like at the time was that Resident Evil 6 was going to be this culminating and quote unquote end to the franchise, right? To the main story of Chris, of all the survivors of Raccoon City. Something that we didn't really mention upon is that in the RE2 and 3, there's a huge missile strike that destroys 50% of the city to try to get rid of all the infected. And it is believed that it was the government who did that to remove the threat of this infection and hopefully put an end to it right away.
Right.
Okay.
you find out that technically it was more like Umbrella had this setup, but then you also find out it wasn't just Umbrella, it was like another shadow organization who was controlling the government because they wanted to protect a lab that was underground, that was doing some even next level, nexter leveler version of the
Mhm.
virus that they wanted to protect. So they needed to nuke the above to make it look like as if everything had been, rectified and blame it on the government. So 6 becomes this idea of like, okay, well, we need to wrap up the storylines of Chris, of Jill, of Leon, of Ada Wong, which we haven't even talked about Ada Wong, a character that
No,
was
we haven't.
introduced. She was introduced in 2 and basically only appeared in the Leon Kennedy stories, right? Where she was like this at first would look like an innocent woman who was just trying to find her boyfriend, but it then is then revealed that she's actually this secret agent that was trying to steal the T virus from one of the Baxter scientists. There's a lot, like we could spend multiple
There's
episodes.
yeah,
So this is
there's
like
a
a
lot
very
to deep
quick,
dive.
this is a very rushed kind of explanation. She's again presumed to have died in 2. You find her in 4, still working for an unknown organization, but it is believed either it's either Umbrella or this other company, this shadow organization that calls themselves the Connection. She appears in 4, helps you out, but then also steals information. Or I believe she steals a piece of the Las Plagas. And then in 6, she is framed to have assassinated, I believe, if I remember this correctly, it was either she was framed to assassinated the president of the United States, or she had been a part of some kind of huge corruption plot within the government. But then it is revealed that it's not actually her, is a woman that looks like her who tried to frame Ada Wong. I don't understand why that's a big plot point. I don't understand why that even matters
I
because
don't know anymore.
and then you then find out that Wesker had a son or was some kind of genetically modified being, maybe a clone, but not really, who had these
Mhm.
superpowers, kind of like Wesker. So they don't know if Chris could trust him. Chris got super mad because his whole infantry got wiped out by some kind of yeah, right. And then he finds himself a male lover, sort of, who then injects himself with the virus to then become this giant monster thing. But somehow he doesn't lose his mind to go fight another giant
Uh-huh.
kaiju monster thing. And it's just like this
Yeah.
giant clusterfuck of guys. Pick a lane. Like I understand you succeeded in 4 by putting action into the series. You then went heavy on it with 5. I'm sorry, but Leon's story at the time did not match with what Chris was doing. Those should have been
Mm-mm.
2 separate games. And Leon stuff at the beginning of 6 kind of has that promise of like, this is gonna kind of still remind you of 4 because it's
Mhm.
kind of dark and brooding, and there's still the same action type of 4 in there. But then they kind of just let go of that. They put that all to the wayside, and it's their Avenger. Is the best way to describe it. Just everyone gets together, except for Claire, which they don't really talk about why Claire isn't there, even though she was a big part of 2. No, she got Code Veronica though, and that's enough for her. Shh.
It's their Avengers, except they used all of the people who were eventually recast. So it's like Edward Norton's Hulk,
Yeah,
and fucking oh, I can't remember the actor's name, but the original
Brody.
guy who was
Yeah,
supposed to
yeah.
be War Machine. Yeah,
Terrence Stamp got
like
replaced. Yeah. Not Terrence
yeah,
Stamp, but Terrence
yeah,
Howard. Excuse me, Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard. So it's like Terrence Howard, Edward Norton. It's all of them. It's the rejects of the Avengers, the people
Exactly.
who had to get recast. That is the equivalent of this video game.
And like to say that I cannot defend. I can kind of defend the actions of 5. I cannot in good conscience say that 6 is a good game. It is a garbage video game from at that point what felt like a storyline or a company who just didn't know what to do with what their prize pig. Like this is Babe, but it's Babe 10 years later that should have died 5 years ago. Like
Oh man.
we should have roasted Babe a long time ago kind of thing.
Mhm.
Jeez.
You can't it's rough. And for a while there, we thought that was the end of it. There was nothing coming out from it besides maybe some little offshoot games and stuff. You know, we had the Revelations games that I think came out sometime between then. I could be wrong on my timeline, but It wasn't until what would that have been?
So you're looking at
2016,
yeah.
2018?
So the timeline, which is kind of a crazy thing here, is that it went from almost not they started almost like a yearly release for the
Mhm.
Resident Evil franchise, then taking a small break to get 4, then a smallish kind of break between 4 and 5. 6 comes out in 2012, and it took them, I believe, it was 6. Is it not 6 years? It took them
I was gonna
5
say, I think it
years.
was 2018.
So
2017?
yeah, January 24th, 2017 was when Resident Evil 7, the masterpiece, came out.
Resident Evil 7 being the BioShock game, the first game in the series to take you into first person, and the first game since 3 to have the main aspect of it be a horror game. This
Mhm.
game was infinitely terrifying. I love watching people play it, but I will never be able to play it myself. Solely because the Bakers as a family is just too fucked up for me to be able to deal with. Um,
Cubic, think of the Texas Chainsaw Family, okay?
Okay.
But genetically modified.
yes,
Okay.
these people cannot. Well, eh, it's a rough statement. They cannot die is not necessarily the truth. They can die eventually, but there's a reason behind that. However,
Yeah.
these people have been living in a shithole in the middle of like the Louisiana bayou for years and years, um, and they have gone slowly crazy. Um, I'll let Larcher actually take over because he's actually played it.
My this for context, for everyone's clarity here, this was literally the moment where I'm like, "Oh my god, the franchise isn't dead." Not only is it
Mhm.
not dead, they brought it back to 2 things, right? The horror aspect of Resident Evil, which I loved, and the slight goofiness that that the Resident Evil franchise had. Again, one of my favorite lines is something I continuously say to this day, which is, like, Bear's like, "Oh, Jill, that was a close one in Resident Evil 2, the original. You almost got crushed by that ceiling. You almost became a Jill sandwich." And
A
like that,
Jill
that a
sandwich.
Jill sandwich, right? One of the classic memes from the Resident Evil franchise, or how in the remaster, just Jill the whole time with Barry, Barry, and like the way that she spoke was like, "You're the strong, kick-ass female lead," but every time Barry comes out, like, "Barry, what are you doing? Barry, help! Barry!" It was like it just became this joke because it was a little goofy and whatnot. They're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
here's a lock pick. I want to give this to you, Jill, because you're the master of lock picking, of unlocking things." And it's just like the way that was phrased. There was always some goofy aspect, and they kind of
It
brought
almost
that
felt like
in. Oh, sorry, say that again?
I was just it almost felt like a weird, like, mistranslation almost with how stupid some of the phrases were.
Oh, I can promise you, at least in the original one, the voice actors were, not were either amateur voice actors or people around the office that spoke English that they got them to do some of the voices for the original RE1. RE
Mhm.
Remaster, they took an approach where it's like, "We're gonna get professionals in, but we're still gonna keep kinda that campy vibe." And a lot of that is seen in Resident Evil 7. Jack Baker, the for the majority of the game, like your big bad lead, is this like again this Louisiana like, "Oh boy, you seem kind of thin. You hungry, boy?" And like he'll just like shove. There's a scene where you as Ethan is strapped to a chair and like they're just shoving just
Mhm.
garbage stuff down your throat, and then like you
Mhm.
spit it out and throw up. He's like, "Oh, you don't like my wife's cooking?" And she gets up, she's like, "He don't like my cooking, Jack. He don't like my cooking." And he just turns like, "Shut up, woman!" And, like it's just this like
Jesus Christ.
it's this highly dysfunctional family, and you're sitting through this family dispute while you're like, "I'm strapped to a chair and I can't escape."
Yeah.
Because
I can't escape. What am I doing?
exactly, right? Because Ethan, the context at the beginning of the game is Ethan is sent this email that has a video from his wife, Mia, who basically says, "Hey, don't find me, leave me be, never like ignore everything you've ever seen. Like I'm gone, basically." because she had been missing. I think it was like a year or 2 years at the beginning of the game,
Mhm.
and you get sent this video where it's like, "Don't find me, leave me alone," which then I don't know if it's like an IP track address. They find the location, and it's at the Baker estate. We'll call
Baker
it the
House. Yeah.
compound. And it's when you get in there, you meet up with your wife, and it's this terribly creepy, super like you might see like a body float around. You're like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, what's that? Oh my God, what's happening over here?" And then she's acting kind of strange where she's like, "Daddy will find us. We can't be here. Dad, we need to leave. Daddy, like, Dad's gonna find us, and you're gonna be in big trouble if Dad finds us." And it's like, "What the fuck are you talking about, Mia?" And then there's a switch. And when that switch happens, it's like for the next 10 minutes, it's nothing but Texas Chainsaw horror of a dude just chasing you down, cutting your arm off, or like getting stabbed by Mia. Like, "Mia, what are you doing?" And then she turns like her face turns wicked, just not even like deformed, but like there's an evilness to her. That's the best way I can describe. And she becomes pale and like just
Yep.
very violent. Oh my goodness, man. And it's like this, you're just like, what is happening? I like you're on the edge of your seat. You get knocked out, you wake up, and then you're strapped down in this chair, and that's where like the main story just flows. And then what's amazing about 7 is that not until the very end of the game is there no nod really. There might be a couple of articles here and there that kind of talks about Raccoon City or Umbrella, but you don't hear about Leon. You don't hear about Chris, Claire, Ada, none of them. No Barry, no Jill, nothing. It is like this standalone story within the Resident Evil, at least for the time, that just revolved around Ethan trying to rescue his wife and then trying to figure out what the hell is happening here. It is just
Interesting.
it's the tension is so
It's
crazy. I can't. Oh my goodness! Like I'm funny enough that you talked about like why you'll watch someone play this. Like I am now going through 5 with a friend. I'm gonna be streaming it. Then I'll be doing 6, unfortunately, and then I'm going back to 7, and 7 will be the moment where like it'll wash away the sins of 6. Is the best way I can describe it.
Listen,
It's just
at some point, I plan on playing 6 on stream because I've never been able to finish it, so I am with you. I understand your pain. However, I won't be able to have the palate cleanse because 7's too scary for me. I will literally shit the bed. I had to play Alan Wake 2 in the daytime every day that I streamed it until I beat it because it was too scary. And it's not that scary of a game. It has horror elements. It's pretty scary, but it's like a 2 compared to 7's, scary scale, and
yeah,
so fuck no. No, no, no.
and
You
that's
keep
the
that
thing.
shit.
And that's the thing. Like there's something about again, just kind of touching on it quickly. North American horror, it's like a big moment, and then it kind of cools down, and then you do your stuff, and you walk around, and you figure out what's happening, and then another moment. I feel like
Mhm.
specifically with the Resident Evil franchise, there's never that just like moment. It's like no. At any moment, someone's coming through the wall. So a dog's going through the
Mhm.
window. You're gonna get pulled from underneath and dragged down to hell. And there's not a safe moment unless you're in that safe. That is, and even
Mhm.
then, I can't remember. I don't know if it was in the remake of 2. I know for a fact that one was. But there's a moment where you think you're safe in the safe room, and then boom, there's a moment where like the wall breaks and like all hell
Mhm.
again, all hell goes like lets loose. And the moment you thought you were secure and you can have that sip of tea, no man, you gotta run. You gotta get out of there. And that's what
That's why
this
I
franchise
never finished it.
and like again, it has some of it has the tropes. I'm not gonna say tropes, I'm gonna call them staples because it's not a bad thing.
Uh-huh.
It has the staples of Resident Evil where everything starts falling apart. You have to rush your way through. You meet your big bad. Your big bad evolves into this giant creature, and then you have to take it out. And then who ends up by helping you, which then really connects you into the world of Resident Evil? It's Chris Redfield. He shows up, uh, finally stopping taking steroids. He's all natural now, so he's slimmer. He's not as angry. His nose is big for some reason,
He's
elongated.
natty,
So
bro.
yeah, he's all natty now. And he gives you a gun that defeats the big bad, which in this one is also it's not the T virus, it's not the G virus, it's not the Las Plagas, it's mold. And it sounds weird because like,
Yep.
what do you mean? What do you mean mold? And it's black mold too. It's like it's not like you're obviously your everyday mold. It's this thing that was bred and evolved, and you don't get all the answers right away, which I absolutely love. It leaves you to guess what's going on until you get to 8, which then they give you more of an origin towards it. But in 7, it's such this like this one isolated, like there's a tanker that blew up that had this thing. Evelyn, who looks like a little girl, actually ended by, spoilers right now, even though we've been doing it for the whole podcast now. Evelyn, who you thought was this young little girl, started off young, but then when you first meet her, she's actually this old, decrepit lady, but you don't know this. You think it's the grandma. You think it's just Grandma Baker that's on the side, but it's actually Evelyn, this evil being that with the mold infected the Baker's minds and Mia, and now trying to do that with Ethan and creating this false world that Evelyn's this innocent little girl, but really she's now this super decrepit being that cannot protect herself. So the way that she protects herself is by infecting people with the mold and giving them the image of like, this is my little girl. I need to protect my little girl no matter what. But then obviously
Mhm.
it always goes off the rails. The Bakers lose their mind, except for their son, who never somehow never got infected by the mold, but was working with the connections to get Evelyn to them. But then he goes rogue as well. And it becomes this whole like cat and mouse game part. And that's where the big time wackiness comes in, is when you face, unfortunately, I can't remember Jack Baker's son's name, but he has like this
No.
whole funhouse aspect where it ends up by being also a DLC that gets added on, which I think it's called Ethan Must Die.
Birthday.
Pardon?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I
Oh
was
no.
thinking of the birthday scene.
Oh yeah,
Like
that's
the
another
little
part, right? Like that's where it gets super whack. And this is where the game, like they're really testing what they can do with a first person perspective horror game, which is also still a horror survival. It becomes this wonderful play of like, I don't, I could play the game, I will get spooked, and I will enjoy it. They released this not that long after when it initially came out on the VR. I do not think I could play
Uh-huh.
Resident Evil 7 on the VR because I think I would join Koda here in the shit my pants club.
I can't imagine that. Oh my gosh.
Shitting your pants or playing it in VR?
Uh, I'll let you decide.
It's up for
Um,
you to find out.
yeah, it's up for you to find out. Um, so I know that we've been going for about an hour, and usually this is where we wrap up, but we're having fun, so let's just keep it rolling, actually. Let's go into 8 with one of my favorite characters, having not played it before fully, but um, well,
Say it.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Is this the one with the step on me, mommy?
This is
Lady Dimitrescu?
that is correct. Lady Demonstress, it became the focal point in the initial ad campaigns, like the trailers you saw, because you just saw this 7 foot tall angel.
Vampire lady?
You know what? You call her that. She's my angel. Okay. This this
She's
giant.
something.
This giantess who's just well formed. I like my ladies big and strong, and she is exactly that. And I understand why a lot of people are like, you could step on. It's totally fine. You go ahead, step on me, mommy.
I'll
But like it
part of that
became
club.
the what was interesting with 8, because I'm not gonna call it a love-hate relationship, but it concludes the storyline of Ethan and Mia, reveals something that happened in 7 that explains why Ethan was able to, like, at certain points, like his hand would get cut off, but then he would just put some medical ointment on the wound and put like reattach his hand, and there'd be no scars, no seam, no nothing. They'd just be like, yeah, he's totally fine. It's like, what do you mean? He lost his hand. He lost an eyeball. What do you mean he's fine? He just rubbed some green herbs on it and he was okay. That no,
Awesome sauce.
never in the franchise has that ever been a thing. Like, you could heal from getting hurt, but never lose a limb. It's okay. You just fucking put a little, and then you just rub it back in and you're good to go. That was never a thing before. They explain in 8 where actually at the beginning of 7, Ethan dies. He just straight up dies. And the mold has this capability of recreating people and using memories from the dead host and memories and feelings from other people that are infected, in that case Mia, where it recreated Ethan, but he wasn't corrupt. He was still pure. So she ends up never telling Ethan, "You're not actually my husband. You're mold." She has a family with this guy, has a baby. The baby gets kidnapped. And then in the beginning scenes of 8, you literally see Mia get shot in the head by Chris. And then the baby gets taken, and you don't understand what's happening. You then later find out that the baby gets literally just dissected, like cut into pieces and given to these lords in this. Again, they don't say where it is, but again, by the looks of it, it's like a European part that's unknown to everyone else. And you are now just trying to get back your baby and your wife. And the beginning parts of it, it's like, oh, this isn't just Resident Evil. They're doing like a nod, an ode to classic horror films. You have vampires, you have lycanthropes, werewolves. You have like classic possession or like Saw-like moments. You have this eccentric character, which you see in the second picture. Heinrich, I think is his name.
Mhm. I think so.
Yeah, or it's yeah, I
Heinrich?
believe it's Heinrich. Yeah, Heinrich. I believe you're right. Who's like this? He has the power of metal. Like he's like basically Magneto kind of thing. And they start off strong with the horror, and then in the midway point, they kind of go goofy. And then near the end, they kind of save it back up, where you see this lady in the middle, in the second picture. Unfortunately, I cannot remember her name, but she's like the big mastermind. She's the one who, with the help of Umbrella, scientists, basically created the virus. And the Umbrella logo is actually like an ode to these families, because you find this like pedestal where it has these points that when you look at it, the top view, kind of looks like the Umbrella logo. So you find out that these are the originators of everything that's happened in the series. You find out that they're the ones who were controlling the mold. You find out that they're the ones that believe that because Mia had a daughter made technically partly by mold, because Ethan was dead, that they were the key to either immortality or like unlocking the true potential of the virus. You then also find out that really this lady was just using the baby to recreate her lost daughter, which is kind of a sad notion. She thought that if she were to collect the baby, do this ritual, she could, with the power of the mold, shape this child to become her daughter, her lost daughter. And there's this like very heroic moment where it looks like Ethan's down and out and like he can't get back up. Somehow, through the power of him finding out what he is, knowing that he's mold, and that really he can die, kind of like the Bakers, but he takes a lot. He takes a detonation device, goes to the source of the mold, detonates it, saves his daughter, and it becomes this whole like, oh, well, it looks like, Ethan never really died that day. He just evolved kind of notion, and he became the father that and the hero that the whole world needed. And it was very touching, but I hated it because I actually really did like Ethan was my guy. Like out of all the Resident Evil characters, the two people that I really clung on to was it was Ethan and Leon. But there's some, I guess, again, at that point, I was a father. I was, I was experiencing these feelings that Ethan had had. So I kind of really attached to this character and understood him more than any of the other ones. Because I was never thin. I was never athletic. You know what I mean?
Right.
But as a parent, yeah, absolutely. There's nothing I wouldn't do for my family. So I really connected with them. And it was just like somber moment where it's like, yeah, it's a victory, but it's not a good victory. And you find out that, in I think it was 2037, it literally jumps up years, like 20 years after the events of RE7. Well, I can't remember her name anymore, unfortunately, but Ethan's daughter,
Rose?
is Rose, thank you, Rose, grows up, but she has powers, because of course she does. She's part mold, like she's a quarter mold. So, and she has this connection with this, with her father, or at least the origin of that area. And then in a DLC, you go through these flashbacks where you're seeing more and more the backstory of the main villainess, but then also this very touching moment where Rose has a connection with her father because her father's there. You never see Ethan's face, but like you see the body, you hear him talk, and then because she still has this attachment to the mold, they're able to communicate and then finally kind of kill off the last remnant of the mold. Then having this really nice, peaceful goodbye moment with her father. It's very sad and touching. And again, it kind of feels like, oh, so eight's the finale. Like there cannot be anything more after this, right, guys? Come on, it has to be it. No.
Nope.
No.
And that's when we get to the masterpiece that is the newest game, RE9 Requiem. Why don't you tell us your thoughts on it, Archer?
So RE9
Having just
Requiem,
beat it.
that is correct. I did just beat it about a week ago now. It is the not even the attempt, it is the success of what 6 tried to do, where they actually separated the horror component and the RE4/5 action component, where Leon is in the game as like this grizzled old 50-something-year-old vet who's investigating why people are dropping left and right. But these people are not just regular folks. They are folks who were survivors of it's not Resident Evil 2, but survivors of Raccoon City. But now there's like this weird, mysterious disease that seems to be taking them down one by one. And there's this association of people who are also getting murdered who were from Raccoon City. And there's this connection where this FBI agent, this desk clerk, Grace Ashcroft, gets sent out to figure out what's going on. And one of the locations that she gets sent to figure out this mystery is the location where her and her mother were at a hotel where her mother died. Alyssa Ashcroft, who is a kind of a C-plot character from one of the spin-off games, a reporter who gets killed, and I mean brutally killed in the beginning of that game.
It's not even like subtle. It's
bad. It's like
Gosh.
right in your face. Like it's one of the most like, oh my god, like kills I've ever seen. And this is crazy coming from the Resident Evil franchise, but there's something about how she dies is very jarring. And Grace gets kidnapped, and then the storyline between Grace and Leon kind of intertwine. I think Grace's aspect is because she's like this very mousy, very calm, quiet girl. Her storyline is the pure horror survival aspect, where when I say limited ammo, it is limited ammo. You need to hide and be quiet, and if you're not, you're gonna get murked right away. And the story evolves to where you find out that it's this lingering effect from the T virus, that even though survivors may not have been infected, classically, like bitten by a zombie or injected with the needle, just being in the area, there was something in the air that kind of affected these people, and it's slowly killing them, but not just killing them, transforming them into these creatures where, again, they have like basic motor functions where like, I remember I used to be a cook, so I'm going to cook all the time. But then if you interact with them, they're going to cook you. You know what I mean? You're getting chopped up a little bit. You're getting added to the stew.
You're getting cooked.
Yeah, you are cooked, my friend. And you find out that, okay, well, it's not just this kind of random event. It's this scientist who was using old research notes from Spencer, Oswald Spencer, the originator of the whole virus from Umbrella, who created the first T and G virus. And
in the mansion.
Yes, in the mansion. And then using his notes, these people are discovering that there's an underground lab in Raccoon City that was still intact, that they find their way over there to figure out the ultimate mystery as to why, people are interested in Grace, because she gets captured and they think that she's the key for something. You find characters in the game, as in Emily, this blind little girl who has her own history. And this is the one where I'm not going to go too much into details because some people may not have finished the game. But it concludes in this amazing moment where choices have to be made that will have huge ramifications in the game and, Resident Evil lore. it's this moment where I had begged for the longest time. If like we're at this point in 9, someone has to die. Like a main franchise character has to die. Alyssa dies. She wasn't main. She wasn't a main franchise character. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is like this redemption hero arc for Leon. That this is it. This is how he's gonna get offed officially. No spoilers. There's a bunch of stuff that happens in that game that I would highly recommend, even if you have an inkling of interest. And maybe you've watched Let's Plays or you've played some of the older games, or maybe you've played the remakes of 2 and 3 and 4. I really recommend that you go and play 9. It's this literal encapsulation of everything, of the molds, of the Las Plagas. There's little tip of the hats for things that if you've been following the franchise, you'll see right away. There's not so subtle hints or nods to other events that have taken place. It's this
Lots of
amazing.
nostalgia.
Oh, and that's the thing. Lots of nostalgia. But even if you're not a fan of the franchise yet, or you haven't had a chance to play it, just the core mechanics of the game, we had the discussion on stream once I finished it, where I would rank this out of the what would I call the new trilogy, which is 7, 8, and 9. I still absolutely love 7. The DLC that 7 had. Oh man, it was good. It was really good. But my rating at the time was 7, from best to quote unquote worse. We're still not being that bad. It was 7, 9, and 8. The more I've thought about it, the more I've stewed on it. And now that they've announced more like a DLC story pack is going to come out, excuse me, I believe that 7 and 9 are tied as my absolute favorite in the franchise.
I can't wait to see how you feel about it after the DLC releases.
Yeah.
Because I think it might end up becoming that 9 goes over 7.
There's a very good chance. I like the Grace character. I like what they did with Leon, where he's not this super athletic, guy like he once was. He still's got one-liners and he still has his zingers, but he's
His
not.
reaction time is so fucking slow.
Yes, it is.
I watched, yeah. We might be thinking of the same thing. I watched
Yes,
a
we
video
are.
that was like his reaction time from 2, his reaction time from 4, his reaction time from 9. And
Yeah.
it's like he takes less than like 20 seconds to take out this enemy in RE4, and it takes him almost a full minute before he comes up with a one-liner after watching a woman get brutally murdered in front of him in 9. Like,
Yeah.
he literally is just sitting here, like, she's like, "We gotta go," and he's just staring at her as this dude's coming up behind her, and then, dude, this might be spoilers for the game, but it's a key section of it, but, like, dude comes up from behind her with a chainsaw out of nowhere in the middle of a mental hospital and totally takes her out, and his whole line after, like, sitting there watching this happen is a minute later, he goes, "I think I want a second opinion." Like, this
And like, if this was, RE4 Leon, he would have kick flipped the chainsaw out of the guy's hand and he would use it on, use it for himself. No, you cannot dodge properly.
I
You
mean, this
cannot.
dude's
And
pushing
it is,
50.
yeah, I think he's like 51 or something in the story at that
Yeah.
point. So he's not this spry chicken anymore. And like, there's a moment in the game where he tries to do one of those kick flips, and then afterwards he's like, oh man, that's like he's breathing hard. He's like, that took a lot out of.
Anytime you sprint through the area, he's breathing hard like
Yeah.
he's got asthma.
Like, oh my
Like,
god,
this man is he's just, "Ugh, God, I'm getting too old for this shit."
yeah.
Like,
He is Murtaugh to a T at that point. That is absolutely right.
it's so good. I love the series. It's one of my favorite series despite the fact that I'll never be able to play it. Um, Cubic, is there ever a chance that you would be willing to play these games?
Yeah, a friend of mine actually had some Humble Bundle keys left over, and one of them was for Resident Evil Village. So I'll definitely give that one a
Ooh.
try. It's in my library. A lot of people are telling me with the recent remakes of 2 and 4 that those are really good
Mhm.
ones to go for. So at some
They
point I'll play
are.
them, yeah.
They are. Speaking of 8 real quick, I do wanna go back to that and talking about Misstep on Me Mommy. I found a photo that perfectly encapsulate it encapsulates it. But also, I found my favorite character because, we all have our affliction for certain types and characters.
Of
Um,
course.
and one of mine is like I like I like damaged goods. That's wrong to say. However, um, this character, her name is Bella. She's one of the daughters of Lady Dimitrescu, and she is I would say a full-blown vampire in this, but
Yeah.
she is one of my favorite characters. But the second photo is the more important one, which is the entire internet
Very
being
much so.
held up by Lady Dimitrescu. Lady Dimitrescu. Uh, a very fun game, very good game. I enjoy it a little bit more than Larcher does, but I've played little bits and pieces of it. Haven't finished it yet. I need to. It's just it's one of those games where it's like I think I enjoy it solely because of the name attached to it, and not necessarily because of the mechanics behind it.
Hmm.
Um, but man, we spent a while talking about Resident Evil, the series. Survival horror in itself is just it's a crazy, crazy genre. There's a lot of key aspects that we've talked about involving the inventory management, the quick time events, the limited ammo, and all that stuff. What are, if you could think of some off the top of your head, real quick, guys, what are some other examples? I know we've covered a few of them in this, but um, let's say, what are some other examples of some good survival horror games that you just recognize by name?
Oh, uh,
Hmm.
my go-tos normally, if let's say like this is like a starter entry into someone who wants to play these kind of games, Alien Isolation is always a good one. Um, the Silent Hill
Classic.
franchise, all right, yeah, I think arguably was the competitor, right? The rival for Resident Evil. If you wanted more just scares and like hellscape kind of almost Hellraiser style imagery, I think
Mhm.
that would be the one that I kind of goes to. Dino Crisis was just basically Resident Evil, but instead of zombies, it's dinosaurs, so they move a little bit faster. Yeah, there's it's funny because to me, when I think of survival horror, there's only very few franchises that really stick out to me at this point. And the one that I will always go back to is Resident Evil.
Yeah,
It
I
is.
think I think when it comes to like on the same vein of the genre defining games, I think a Fatal Frame actually.
I
Thank
Uh
was
you.
actually gonna say Fatal Frame.
I forgot
yeah.
about that one.
Yeah, that one's pretty good. One of the more like action leaning ones that I think of is Dead Space, which I really enjoy.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, that's another good one.
And then there was one recently that came out within the past like few years. It was an indie game called Crow Country. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that,
I have
but
not.
it is also like Resident Evil inspired. It's got like the early PS1 style graphics, but I think
Okay.
it handles the genre really well. I would recommend it.
The one of the other ones I could think of, I can always think of like solo entries and not necessarily series themselves. Fatal Frame was the only series that I could think of aside from Resident Evil off the top of my head. But another good one, and this ends up being more in the North American style, is as Larcher has played before years and years ago. Whenever I first met him, the Blair Witch Project game.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah. That one had such
Ve-
promise.
It did. It had such promise. It kind of fell flat, but it's still in that genre,
It is very much so, right? Well, see, that
you
one's
know?
actually when I think about it, is more about a horror narrative.
Yes.
I feel like because you can get away. It's one of those moments where like it's a choose your own adventure horror game, hidden in the idea of a survival horror, but really ultimately you just have these paths and these little puzzle solving moments. But at the end of the at the end of the day, I feel like it's more of like you're just experiencing the narrative than actually experiencing horror that the I'm trying to find the way of describing it. It's
Like a
horror
horror
that
walking sim.
yes, it's horror that's put onto you, not horror that you sometimes put yourself in because I don't have any ammo left. I have no heals. I got like in your intro, I have 1 ink ribbon left, but I'm also 3 floors away from the safe room and I can't save right now.
Exactly. Oh, man. There are a lot of good games in the survival horror genre, and there are some that we didn't even cover. If like we're not even talking, we didn't even cover the side games like um, the Revelations and Outbreak, and even some of the crappier ones like Operation Raccoon City. I don't care. I will fight anyone. I hated that game. It's it's one of the only games in the series that I will ever say don't ever bring back. Um, but that's just because it's a four-player co-op game. It's not really part of the genre of Resident Evil, um, at least to me. But,
No, I understand that.
but yeah, I mean, there's so many good ones. We could have an entire another episode of other stuff involving the series and the genre itself. But, I want to actually do some little closing thoughts before we end this out and ask you guys, why do you think in this day and age Resident Evil is still going as strong as it is? Why does it still, because I would say it still matters to the genre itself, but why would you say that it still matters, or why it's still such a big deal?
Okay, hold you know what? I'm gonna have to take a moment to think about that because I have quite a few thoughts on it. Cubic, do you have something by chance?
Oh, just from observation, it seems as though this game series has been able to adapt, which I think is very important when it comes to a game series that has lasted this long. So it's cool to see
Mhm.
that.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. It's learned to adapt, and while it's had a few pitfalls, it still is like the when you see the title and when you see a game from the series, you know it's going to be a good game,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think
which is
that is an excellent way of putting that. Yes, I think also it's the idea of the developers were not afraid to admit faults. They kind of understood that they made a mistake with 6, and they actually were able to not only make a course correction, but as Cubic said, evolve with the times, right? They could have tried to
mhm.
continuously just do fixed angled horror the entire time. They took a
Like
risk
it
with
could have been
4,
another Call of Duty.
right? It
Mhm.
could have just been a yearly release and like, here's your scares, enjoy. But no, Capcom understood very early on when they made, I think the first one, it almost sold, I think it sold like 1.5 million copies back in the 90s. That was a big deal. That was just in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. And then 2 comes out and it's even an even bigger a hit than the first one, which is very rare in any kind of form of entertainment, that the sequel outshines the first one. That they were able to realize like we have something special, and to not do the formulaic every year release. They decided, no, no, we will release what we have when we can work on it. If delays need to happen, we will make delays. If we need to take a break and realize, man, we messed up, they were willing to do it because they understood that not only was this important for the fans, it was important for the company. This franchise literally saved Capcom when they're at a point where they were looking at declaring bankruptcy, and Resident Evil 1 was the game that kept them afloat, and then was the franchise that kept them thriving throughout the years as they were looking at what they can do to get better. There's something very special about the idea of a it's their Mario. It's their Final Fantasy. It is their thing that they will cherish now from now on, and they'll always understand that this has a very special place in a lot of either new gamers or old heads like me, right? We love
Mhm.
this, and we will continue to support it as long as they are willing to listen and build upon their successes and failures.
Well said. Well said. Honestly, I don't think I could have put it any better. Um, with that being said, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this on up. Cubic, never mind. I'm gonna go ahead and do it because I do it every time. I was gonna
Okay.
see you do the little. I was gonna see you do the little outro, but the last time I did, you said, "Go ahead and throw it over to me." So.
Yeah.
That was a funny moment. I'm not gonna lie.
Um, so you can find all of us online at for me, you can find me on Twitch at Retro Koda. It's a 0 for the first O. Don't ask me why I do that. It's a whole long story. You can find Cubic over on Twitch at the Cubic Guru, and you can find Larcher over on Twitch at SSN Plays. That is two S's, one N, because the first time that I tried to type it out, I put SNN, and that's not right. Um, uh, but you can also find the podcast as well as me and Cubic over on Blue Sky. The podcast is Scuffed AF Pod. You can also find us anywhere on Spotify and YouTube. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, we always appreciate you here. And if there's a question that I'd like to ask and throw out to you guys that have been listening since the start, because I know that there are a couple of you guys, go ahead and put in the comments what your favorite survival horror game is if you have one. There's plenty to pick from, and I would have to say that mine is probably RE4. So, thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you guys come back for the next one. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.